We'll introduce you to an organization that helps foster kids and foster families. We'll talk about whether library funds should go to public safety. Interesting. But we'll begin with the mayor of the city of St. George. Roll it, Kirk. Well, we'll start off first two segments with Mayor Dustin Yates with the city of St. George, interim mayor, but he's on the ballot now and has a challenger in his race to get the job officially there. And so there's a lot to talk about with Mayor Yates, and welcome back to the show, bro.
Yeah, thank you, Clay. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the biggest thing that's come up recently, and obviously that's the salaries for the mayor's position, the police chief, and the city council. The council settled on about 38 grand for the council members. 36 grand for the council members. $140,000 for the police chief and $160,000 for the mayor's position. This would be for the elected officers after July 1st.
That's correct.
All right, so let's talk about that because there was a whole lot of conversation about whether it was a good idea or not. Why those numbers?
So first off, we had to do it then, so we wanted to do it before qualifying.
Right.
So that was one of the questions that came up quite a bit during the process. Our council went through an evaluation process of kind of looking at other areas, what other people were doing. Really what kind of drove some of the numbers were the workload that's involved in it. There was a lot of misconceptions, I think, from some of the ones that opposed it of what exactly the mayor would be doing.
Well, yeah, because there were some people there that thought that the mayor's job would be a part-time job.
Sure, right. Whether the home rule charter passes in March or not, it's a full-time position, and I've been pretty open about that since the very beginning. Obviously, all these mayor jobs are pretty extensive, and when you're considering the fact that you're creating a city, it's a full-time job every day. What
was the biggest complaint against the amounts?
I think the biggest complaint
was just too much money
against the amounts was they didn't agree with the plan of government that we were suggesting. So even the ones that were strong, I guess the strongest opposition against it, looked at our home rule charter, and because we were proposing this hybrid form of government, they thought that it would be a part-time role, like you see in other places around the country.
Sure.
But our form of government won't be a council manager form, and it also won't be a strong mayor form. It's really a hybrid blend. So I think there was really just a lack of understanding on what the mayor's roles and responsibilities would be on a daily basis. To be honest with you, I think that's really where it came from.
The cost of living was increased to 2% annually in the city. Why was that done?
The cost of living increase was put in there. There's a lot of public offices that have that. Central has that baked into their ordinances for pay. It was just something they felt was a fair thing to do. Everything goes up in value, everything goes up in price over time, and 2% is a standard cost of living increase that most state employees and most governmental employees at a minimum get every year.
So what's been happening in the last few months, obviously building the city government and doing the work on behalf of the residents of the area? What's been happening?
Yeah, so since the last time we talked, we did have an election in December. That election was a transfer of that 2-cent sales tax from the parish to the city of St. George. So we passed that with 80% of the vote, which was tremendous. That was validating for us and what we've been doing for the last 7 or 8 months as a city government. The significant part about that is that tax goes into effect April 1. There's about a 10-week lag on sales tax collections, so we'll start receiving that full remittance probably in the midway part of June, which is significant, obviously. As we're building the city and people know that we've had issues with funding because we still lack an agreement with the city parish. I think
Where's that, by the way?
Yeah, I think it's going a lot better right now. We've had some really good conversations. I'm in the middle of it today, actually. So there's not a day that goes by that we're not constantly engaging not only Coach Sid's office and his newly appointed folks that are working for him, but also the council members. Because also ultimately the council has to approve whatever agreement we come to.
Yeah. Alyssa, we'll jump into break a little bit faster because I want to come back and talk about working on that agreement with the city parish, and then get the mayor's thoughts on public works for the city of St. George, and then this money that the city parish is talking about moving from the library to city parish government may have a St. George aspect to it, and I'll explain what I mean next. And here's where you can get me on the socials right there: X, Instagram, and Facebook. You really ought to do that. Well, all right, finishing our discussion with Mayor Dustin Yates with the city of St. George. Okay, so now you have a new counterpart at the city parish level. The mayor president is Sid Edwards, and I know that you guys certainly have spoken since he's been in the office. How's that gone?
Sure, yeah, well, we speak all the time, whether it's on the phone or in person, and meeting with him and his staff. And I think it's a relationship that will build over time, but we certainly have started off on good footing. He understands that a great St. George makes a great East Baton Rouge parish, and that's what we've always said. And now we feel like we have an advocate for that very thing in that office.
There are still some staunch adversaries to the city's formation on the city council. Are those fences mendable?
I absolutely believe that they are. And I talk to council folks all the time. I talk to Republicans, I talk to Democrats. To me, that really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that we're doing the best thing for St. George and the best thing for the parish. And part of that is explaining to those folks what's going on and letting them be part of the process. And hopefully we can come up with a solution that works for everybody.
I'm going to be talking in the next segment with Councilman Dwight Hudson, who actually has a council district within the city of St. George, about this discussion that took place earlier this week at the Metro Council about the millage for the library and whether or not some of that money should go into the city's general fund, closing the gap on public safety and other things. One of the reasons it was talked about was because of St. George and the impact St. George has had on the city parish government. Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
well, I'll tackle the second point here. St. George is getting blamed for an awful lot in this process, right? Every time that there's a budgetary cut that has anything to do with the city of Baton Rouge, it's noted in whatever article it is that it's because of St. George. I would contest that. I would contest that maybe things weren't appropriated correctly the first time go around by councils of years past, and things weren't prioritized the way that they should, and that's why we end up. Well, when you're using parish dollars to fund services that are only in the city, I mean, that was always one of our big contentions for the city of St. George, and one of the issues that we had. When they cut things like public safety inside the city of Baton Rouge based off of lost tax dollars in the parish, there's an issue with that. And it's really not something you find in government a whole lot, where you have separate entities or separate areas that are funding services that belong in one particular jurisdiction. So, to further on the conversation with the libraries, I think, with Coach Sid coming in now, that they need to evaluate a lot of things. They need to look at a lot of the independent taxing districts. The one thing I will say about that, though, in the same reference that I made to the earlier point, is that the library is a parish-wide entity.
Yeah.
So if we're going to look at going into parish-wide entities and reallocating some of those dollars, all of those dollars can't go back into the city of Baton Rouge. Some of those dollars have to be reallocated throughout the entirety of the parish. And I'm not just referring to St. George, because everybody in the parish pays into that. Whether you live in Central, Zachary, Baker, you're unincorporated, you're in St. George, everybody pays into that system.
Right. You do have a challenger on the ballot against you coming up here in a few weeks, and has talked about how what St. George is not what it was originally envisioned to be. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer to that, because I've been around this process since 2013, and we're carrying out the same exact mission and vision that we started with in 2013. My opponent fell out, essentially, and was angered over the salary part that you brought up in the beginning, and that's why he chose to run, he says. I'll just make note that I announced my candidacy before that meeting ever took place. So I don't know really what his motivation is on that, but as far as aligning with the mission and vision, the original folks that started this in 2013 support me, and they've supported me this entire process. They know who I am. They know where my heart's at. They know the work that I've done for free for 12 years, not to mention the year that I'm going to spend volunteering as the only volunteer mayor in the state of Louisiana, and they support me moving forward because I understand the mission, because I understand the vision of where we want to go. I talk to business owners and residents, community leaders every day, Clay. Every day, and whether they were for St. George in the beginning or against St. George in the beginning, I really see a tide turning here, where people are starting to get excited about the possibility of government, and I think we sell ourselves short on that. You know, we settle for the probability. You know, it's probably going to work, or this probably can happen, and we sell ourselves short because we miss out on everything that's possible through government.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and you know, there's a lot moving out there right now. We were talking about something during the commercial break that in the coming weeks we'll be able to chat about more openly here on the show. Thanks for coming in, Mayor.
Clay, always a pleasure.
Listen, next we're going to talk with Councilman Dwight Hudson specifically about the conversation at the Metro Council about the library tax. We'll do that next. And don't forget, if you don't have the WAFB app, you should go on and download it. It's free 99. Go get it. You can catch the show Fridays early and then 7 o'clock Friday night, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Frustrating commercial break conversation. I can't even get into the information I got about it, but we're going to work on it though. Councilman Dwight Hudson representing Council District number 9 here in East Baton Rouge Parish and in the city of Baton Rouge. Busy week for y'all this week, huh?
Yeah, it's a productive week at Metro Council and for the city parish in general, so this is an exciting week.
Well, let's jump into the thing that people most want to hear about, and that is this discussion about removing some of the millage from the library and rededicating it to the city parish budget with a priority on public safety. Now, there's discussion about whether or not this can happen, if there's legalities there. This happened a few years ago when there was a push to get some of that millage rerouted to mosquito abatement, and that didn't happen. So where are we with that now, just with the discussion y'all had this week?
Right, so where the discussion is this week is a commitment from all sides to come back to the table and find a plan that can work for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really encouraging sign. The unfortunate reality of creating these independent funding districts and dedicated taxes is that we operate in silos when that happens, right? So the library will bring their millage without a lot of discussion amongst the other departments. Mosquito abatement is another example, Council on Aging, and others will plan their finances without thinking about the holistic approach from city parish. But now, because we're taking on this effort, what we're seeing is that we're bringing folks to the table, and everybody's having a discussion about how they can help offset some of these cuts and things like that we're seeing.
We've heard discussions about how much money there is in excess with the library, and I've heard different numbers. What is the number?
Yeah, so the current fund balance for the library system is $114 million.
Yeah.
They have an annual budget of just over $60. Now there's a big discussion of whether you want to call that a surplus or whether you call it a fund balance. Look, this is my take on it. You're at the end of a 10-year capital improvements campaign. You have $114 million in the bank. That's mostly cash in the bank. You have a $60 million annual budget, and so I think that is extra money. That's a demonstration that possibly the millage has been too high. We've collected more than we needed to spend annually and on the capital campaign, and so we can do some other things with those dollars.
People who support the library, and even some of the library officials, have talked about this being detrimental to the parish library system. So how do you reconcile those two things, the overage in capital with the leadership there and many residential supporters of the library system saying that this would hurt?
Yeah, look, we don't get to look at it through a lens of just the library system or just any individual budget. As a city councilman and as somebody leading the parish fiscally, I have to look at the entire picture, right? And so we're seeing anywhere from an 8 to 12% cut in the 2025 budget across general fund departments. And then next year we're looking at could be as much as 20% budget cuts when we see the full impact of those budget cuts come in. And so when I look at those budget cuts coming down the road, and then I look at a department with a fund balance the size that it is, look, you've got to go where there's room to make cuts.
All right, and so Alyssa's going to put up a map of the libraries here in the parish. If you are talking about this, removing some of the millage from the library and then allowing them to maintain their operational and maintenance budget of about $60 million, then what is the priority for those dollars that you would then reallocate to the city parish government?
Well, I think the priority is funding for law enforcement.
I saw pay raises, but is it going to be for additional positions as well?
No, I think the focus is on pay raises right now. You know, funding additional positions wouldn't make sense at this point because we have positions that we currently can't fill, right? Yeah. So I think that the focus is on pay raises. And then the other focus would be, in my opinion, on constitutional offices that are funded from the general fund budget. And the reason why I'm saying it's constitutional offices is because those are offices that serve the entire parish. It really, you know, now with the incorporation of St. George, Central, Zachary, Baker, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have just the city of Baton Rouge and the unincorporated part of the parish paying for those constitutional offices out of the general fund any longer. They shouldn't be the sole funder of those constitutional offices.
I know that there was a more than amicable approach to the dialogue between the leadership at the library and the mayor president's office. I mean, they've even commented that they've had very civil discussions about this. In the room last night, though, there is what happens at council meetings. Do you feel like this pits pro-library residents against the Baton Rouge Police Department?
It's a natural evolution of the discussion, and it's unfortunate that it happens. But look, ultimately, I think when you talk to constituents, certainly when you talk to all the staff, everybody gets it. Everybody understands the issues that we're facing, and they understand the tough decisions that we're having to make. So I think that's important to keep in mind moving forward. Yes, everybody's aware of the politics and the dynamics that come with it. But at the end of the day, we're making a budgeting decision. We're making a decision based off priorities for the parish. And so we do try to remove some of that drama, for lack of a better word, out of the discussion.
Well, let's do this. In a couple of weeks, I think this is supposed to come back up. Would you come back and kind of give us an update on where this thing is?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was very encouraging to hear that both sides are being civil in their discussion about how to work this out. All right, Councilman Dwight Hudson, Council District number 9. Up next, we'll tell you about an organization that's helping foster children and foster families in general. It's so great. You'll have the information. And the C-Suite podcast, the current episode, features an interview with the lead investigator in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. You can catch Detective Tom Lang right now. And this month, we have a surprise on location spot for you, but I'm not going to tell you today. So Methodist Foster Care does such great work for families here in the state of Louisiana. We've got Colby Hennigan, one of the recruiters with the organization, Miss Doris Jackson, who's wearing that hat. And we're going to talk a little bit about her as a foster parent, but let's talk about what Methodist is and what you do.
All right, perfect. So Methodist Foster Care, we are a therapeutic foster care agency. We are now one of the largest therapeutic foster care agencies in the state. And a lot of people don't know, but the Louisiana foster care system is really split up into 2 systems. The general foster care system, which is governed by DCFS, and then therapeutic foster care, which is contracted out to nonprofits like Methodist Foster Care to really specialize with those youth who need that extra level of care.
And, you know, I was doing some reading about that. You deal with kids who have dealt with trauma.
Yes.
And you help them and the families that they're going to be with kind of be able to mesh and integrate so that the families understand the child coming in and the trauma that he or she may bring with them and how it works so well. How do you go about doing that?
So how we approach it with a TBRI model that we use. TBRI stands for Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And the foundation of everything that we're going to do at Methodist is trust. We have to build trust with our foster parents. We have to build trust with those youth. And like you mentioned, youth come into our program with trauma.
Yeah.
Now, youth enter foster care, both general and therapeutic, because of trauma.
Yeah.
Those who enter ours, though, have received a little bit more. And so those survival skills, those skills that really got them from day to day in those homes, require extra level of training, which, like Ms. Jackson over here, has received.
So let's talk about that. How's the training been, and how's that experience been for you?
The training went very well. In the training, it gave us all of the basic information that we would need to be able to take care of therapeutic children. And you go into it knowing that these children have gone through some things in their lives.
Yeah.
So they need to be with someone that can be patient,
Yep.
loving, and kind to them in spite of what they've been
What they've
through.
been through. Yeah. I know it's got to be rewarding.
It is very rewarding, and it so much so when you bring one in and this child has been shifted from one home to another, and then you get in and he see that, oh, she's patient with me, she's letting me do some of the things I do without saying, I'm gonna call them to come get you. And that's what I always try to do. I come in knowing that it's not a perfect child,
Yeah.
and knowing that it's gonna take some time and patience. And I've done that, and certainly with the child that I have in my care right now. Many times, after 1 or 2 days, people will say, he's gotta go. But I don't. I say, I give him time when they come in and the behaviors are a little bit more than what you may think you can stand. Just think about it and know that this child is not doing this on his own. Something has happened
Something
to
caused
him.
it.
Something has
And
caused
God
it.
bless you for that. So quickly, if people want to know how to get involved, if they want to foster a child, how can they do that?
So we have a really streamlined recruitment process. So you just go to recruitfostercare.com and you can apply directly to be a foster parent with Methodist. It will go straight to our lead recruiter. We have them all across the state. For this region, it is myself and Mr. Damon. We go out all across Southeast Louisiana, just telling the stories of like Miss Jackson and other of our great foster parents. But also we have our Facebook page,
And
Methodist.
she just had it up on the screen.
Yes, Methodist Foster Care, and we put all of our information up there.
So awesome. I'm just proud of what y'all do. You always have a space here if you want to come talk about what's happening at Methodist. I love this. Look them up, y'all. And if you're interested, now you know how you can get involved. All right, there is this discussion over whether or not the Department of Education at the federal level should remain. Next week, we will talk about that. And we'll get into the off season of football as well. You guys have a great weekend. Stay warm. We'll see you next time.